Moscow, Idaho, a small city with a population of a little over 26,000 people. At the center of it, the University of Idaho, a bustling campus full of bright minds and infinite potential. The sort of place that should be the start of a young person's life, not the end of it. This is the last known photo taken of 4 University of Idaho students, uploaded to Instagram just hours before their lives were taken at their off-campus accommodation. Madison Mogan and Zana Knodel were co-workers at Main Street's Mad Greek restaurant. As well as working together, the pair also lived together at 1122 King Road, a 6-bedroom, 3-story rental property situated on a quiet residential street. Also living in the house were their 2 friends, who, for the sake of their privacy, I'll be referring to as D and B. Madison's lifelong best friend, Kaylee Gonsalves, had been living at the house with the other 4 girls and had only recently moved out. She was preparing to embark on a backpacking trip across Europe before beginning her new job in Austin, but had made time to see Maddie for one last goodbye, a farewell captured in this photo. Sana's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, had also become close with his partner's housemates and often stayed over. Sana and Ethan were described as 2 goofy peas in a pod, she a talented gymnast, and he a tulip farmer. They were a light-hearted, kind-hearted, positive group of friends, full of warmth and life. But their bright futures were cruelly snatched away from them one fateful winter's night in 2022. This is the timeline of that night, and a breakdown of the investigation so far. Between making videos, managing projects, and trying to find some semblance of work-life balance, it often feels like there aren't enough hours in the day, so I'm always looking for ways to make my life easier. And one game changer for me has been today's sponsor, Stamps.com. Stamps.com streamlines all your postage needs, making your business more efficient and saving you time, money, and stress. Their mobile app is like a 24/7 post office in your pocket, letting you handle mailing and shipping anywhere. All you need is a computer and a printer. They'll even send you a free scale to get started. Scheduling package pickups is easy through the Stamps.com dashboard, and you can find the cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers automatically. Whether you're running a home operation or managing multiple offices, Stamps.com gives you access to USPS and UPS mailing services from wherever you do business, day or night. You can order shipping and mailing supplies, labels, and even printers from their supply store, so no more unnecessary trips either. And if you sell online, Stamps connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart. But my favourite thing has to be the huge discounts. With Stamps.com, you can get rates of up to 89% off USPS and UPS. So if you want to put more life into your work-life balance, sign up at stamps.com/lazymasquerade for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to stamps.com/lazymasquerade. November 12th, 2022 was a Saturday. That evening, the students pictured here went off in separate groups to enjoy a night of drinks and laughter. Kaylee and Madison went into the city centre, and Zana and Ethan to an organised event. Here's how their night unfolded. At 8:57 PM, Kaylee posted this photo, taken earlier that day, to her Instagram page, with the accompanying caption, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day." At 10 PM that night, Kaylee and Madison were seen at the Corner Club, a downtown sports bar. There, they spent several hours drinking and chatting. Meanwhile, Zana Knodel and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, were seen at an on-campus party taking place at the Sigma Chi fraternity, approximately a 5-minute walk from 1122 King Road. At 1:30 AM on the 13th, Kaylee and Madison left the Corner Club and were caught on CCTV making their way south with a man who isn't a suspect in the case. The next available images of the two were captured at 1:41 by the Grub Truck, a food truck which was operating on Friendship Square and whose owner happened to be live streaming on Twitch.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks. I think I would like the carbonara.
Okay.
But if I have like a free grub truck on my app.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is, we'll actually do this.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
many more do you need? That's the second one? Awesome.
At the same time Kaylee and Madison placed their food order, Zana and Ethan left the party at Sigma Chi and made their way back to 1122 King Road. At 1:51 AM, Kaylee and Madison hopped into a taxi and 6 minutes later arrived back home. Zana and Ethan were already inside, along with D and B. From this point, the house fell relatively quiet. Kaylee and Madison were hanging out on the 3rd floor, Zana and Ethan in Zana's 2nd floor bedroom, D on the 2nd floor, and B on the 1st floor. Between 2:26 and 2:52 AM, Kaylee and Madison made 10 calls to Kaylee's former long-term boyfriend. None of them were answered. At 2:53 AM, a white sedan is seen driving along the highway from Pullman towards Moscow, roughly an 8-mile journey. At 3:29 AM, CCTV footage caught that same white sedan passing by 1122 King Road, where Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan were relaxing. By 3:59 AM, that car had been captured driving by the house 2 more times. At 4 AM, phone records showed that Zana received a DoorDash delivery. According to the driver, he left the order at the front door. At 4:04 AM, the white sedan was seen passing by the residence for a 4th time. It attempted to park outside before leaving and immediately returning again. At that same time, Dee was awoken by what she thought was the sound of Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs. She opened her bedroom door and toned her ears, and believed she heard either Kaylee or Zana say, "There's someone here." Dee then closed her door and returned to bed. A forensic download of Zana's phone showed that she was awake and scrolling through TikTok at 4:12 AM. Dee says that she opened her door a second time at 4:13 AM and heard what she thought was crying coming from Zana's bedroom across the hallway, followed by a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm gonna help you." At 4:17 AM, a Ring doorbell camera on a neighbor's house located less than 50 feet from Zana's bedroom captured the distorted sound of voices, a whimper, and a loud thud. 1 minute later, at 4:18, Dee opened her bedroom door for a 3rd and final time. This time, she didn't hear anything, but rather saw a man dressed in black with a mask covering his mouth and nose, walking quickly towards her. This figure walked right past Dee, entered the kitchen, and exited the house via the sliding glass door. It's unclear whether this figure didn't see Dee or simply chose to ignore her. Regardless, Dee was left frozen in fear. She locked her bedroom door, and, in a state of dissociative shock, opted not to call the police. At 4:20 AM, nearby cameras caught images of the white sedan speeding away from the scene. Neither D nor B heard anything to suggest that something terrible may have happened to Zana, Ethan, Kaylee, or Madison. Almost 8 hours later, at 11:58 AM, the authorities were summoned to 1122 King Road after a caller reported unconscious people at the property. Ethan's best friend had come over to the home and found the 4 students unresponsive. Responders arrived to find the property's front door wide open with no signs of a forced entry. Inside the residence were D, who was paralyzed with fear, B, who had slept through the entire ordeal, and several other friends whom they had since called for assistance. The bodies of best friends, Kaylee and Maddie, were discovered in a bedroom on the 3rd floor, and Zana and Ethan on the floor below. they'd all sustained multiple puncture wounds made using a Kabar knife, and red arterial spray covered the walls of both bedrooms. None of them had been bound, gagged, or restrained in any way. And yet, none of them had screamed. Despite the mutterings Dee had heard, investigators believe that all 4 victims must have been asleep before they were attacked. Experts determined that their lives had been ended at some point between 4 and 4:25 am. Even if help had been summoned immediately after the attacks took place, professionals are confident that none of them could have been saved. While examining the scene, the forensic team discovered a vital piece of evidence: the sheath of the blade used to end the 4 victims' lives, a sheath that the perpetrator had forgotten to attach to their belt. It was found face down, partially under both Madison's body and the comforter on her bed. Crucially, a DNA sample was found on its clasp, one belonging to a single male source. Investigators collected what they called a video canvas, made up of CCTV and home surveillance footage from around the area, and concluded that they were looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Though they initially believed the attack was a crime of passion, 3 days after the slayings, Moscow Police Chief James Fry announced, "We cannot say that there is no threat to the community." Dee would describe the intruder she saw that night as a man standing around 5 feet and 10 inches, not very muscular, but athletically built, with bushy eyebrows. On November 30th, Moscow police issued a list of individuals that they believed were not connected to the crime. That list included D and B, a man seen on the grub truck surveillance video, the taxi driver who took Kaylee and Madison home, the man Kaylee and Madison called repeatedly on the night they were killed, and everyone present at the property when the 911 call was placed. While examining their surveillance canvas, detectives made a huge discovery. They realized that the white sedan had traveled to Moscow from the neighboring city of Pullman. After tracing the owners of every similar car in the area, one man came onto their radar. This is the authorities' one and only suspect, 28-year-old criminology PhD student and former teaching assistant, Brian Kohberger, a man studying at Washington State University in Pullman. Before we continue, it's important to note that Brian is yet to stand trial and is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. That being said, here are the facts as released by the authorities. Not only did Brian match the description of the perpetrator given by Dee, not only did he drive the same make and model car as seen passing 1122 King Road, and not only did he suspiciously receive new license plates 5 days after the incident, but his movements also lined up with those of the killer. At 2:47 am on November 13th, a cell phone belonging to Brian Kohberger stopped connecting to the network in Pullman. At that same time, the white sedan was seen making the 8-mile journey towards Moscow. Around that time, Brian's phone disconnected from all networks, suggesting he turned it off. At 5:25, around an hour after the slayings had taken place, Brian's phone reconnected to the network in Pullman. A more in-depth examination of his phone turned up something sinister. His device had pinged off a cell tower near the murder scene at around 9 am on November 13th, roughly 5 hours after the slayings. It's speculated that he may have realized he left his sheath behind at the scene and had returned to retrieve it. His phone had also pinged from the same tower at least 12 times between June and November 2022. According to a probable cause affidavit released in January 2023, all of these occasions occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective days. Still, his movements could have been circumstantial. He did live relatively close to the victims after all, albeit in the next town over. One way investigators could confirm whether Brian was involved would be to link him to the DNA found on the sheath. A public genealogy database helped authorities identify a partial DNA match, suggesting a familial connection to Brian Kohberger, but they wanted more confirmation. On December 15th, Brian and his father were on their way to Pennsylvania to spend the holidays. During their journey, they were stopped twice by officers, ostensibly for following a vehicle too closely. According to The Independent, however, those stops had actually been requested by the FBI, who were seeking images of the suspect's hands. It's not yet clear why the images of Brian's hands were so important to the investigation, or if the officers managed to obtain anything of interest by carrying out the stops, but regardless, Brian and his father were allowed to continue with their journey, none the wiser. Covertly, officers took DNA samples from trash outside Brian's family home in Pennsylvania, where he was spending the holidays, and found them to be consistent with the DNA found on the sheath in Madison's room. Still under observation, Brian was seen outside his parents' home, wearing surgical gloves, disposing of trash bags in a neighbour's garbage can at 4 AM. The authorities also noted that Brian had meticulously cleaned his car, both inside and out. On December 30th, Brian Kohberger was arrested at his family's property. Now in custody, the police took a buccal swab to directly compare Brian's DNA with that found on the sheath. The test determined that the DNA was 5.37 octillion times more likely to be Brian's than a randomly selected individual from the general population. During a search of the home, authorities found a blade, a pistol, and a black face mask, along with ID cards concealed inside a glove within a box. It's not yet been revealed who those ID cards belong to. Numerous objects were also seized from the property, including a pillow with a reddish-brown stain and a collection of dark red spots. Curiously, it's since come to light that Brian followed all 3 of the female victims on Instagram and had allegedly tried to contact one of them repeatedly on the app 2 weeks before the killings, persistently asking, "Hey, how are you doing?" Since none of the girls followed him back, it's possible they hadn't even noticed his messages. Former employees of the Mad Greek restaurant where Zana and Maddie worked have also testified that Brian visited their store in the lead-up to the slayings, though said he hadn't acted suspiciously at the time. It's unclear whether or not Brian interacted with either Zana or Maddie, or even if he had met any of the decedents. Why he chose to target their home and them specifically, if indeed he did, also remains unclear. It's worth noting, however, that shortly before the incident occurred, Brian was carrying out a research project to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. This included asking ex-cons on Reddit how they felt before, during, and after committing atrocities. Whether this research was curricular or extracurricular remains unknown, but some web sleuths believe that Brian may have taken this assignment very seriously. When asked how he pled in court, Brian remained stone-faced and silent. The presiding judge entered a not guilty plea for each charge on his behalf. As it stands, Brian Kohberger maintains his innocence, claiming he was just out on a late-night drive on November 13th, hiking, running, and stargazing. Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone, his lawyers have stated. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12th and into November 13th, 2022. Our client is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. Despite that claim though, there is a mountain of evidence stacked against him, not least the DNA samples, surveillance footage, and cell tower data. And that's just the evidence that's been made public. That's to say, if Brian is innocent, he's the unluckiest man in the world. Brian has since waived his right to a speedy trial. As such, his trial date has yet to be set. Due to a gag order, at present, only a limited amount of information has been released to the public. This order's been put in place to protect Mr. Kohberger's right to a fair trial, though in his attorney's opinion, finding a fair and unbiased jury is going to be impossible. At time of publishing, he's requesting a change in venue, citing the, quote, extensive inflammatory pretrial publicity, allegations made about Mr. Kohberger to the public by the media that will be inadmissible at his trial, the small size of the community, the salacious nature of the alleged crimes, and the severity of the charges. As a result of the gag order and the case's ongoing status, many questions are yet to be publicly answered. What was the killer's motive? Were all 4 students the intended targets, or were some of them collateral damage? What about D&B? Why were they left unharmed? No doubt all of that will come to light in due course, and for the sake of the families of all involved, I hope that's sooner rather than later. Until then, we'd all do well to remember what the world lost that cold November's night. 2 best friends, 2 romantic partners, and 4 bright futures, all taken for no good reason whatsoever. Before the video ends, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Modest Bulbasaur, Alana Pons, Asia Mina, Azriel Warakai, Chief Kochuake, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Sai Wazao, Fansdress Papyrus, Farewell Tattoos Jack Sapel, Gina Valera, Hamish, Ian Belloc, Misty Blue Longy, Peter Logchurch, Terry Ford, TNS Mum, Hamish K, LJB, Ellen Doloff, Itai Allen, Nefus 1988, and Lydia. Thank you guys so much for your continued support.